Howdy folks, welcome to another beautiful day out here in West Vancouver. In today's video we're going to talk about immigration. It's finally happening. For those of you that remembered, I spoke a while ago about how things are turning against immigrants or against immigration in Canada, and mainly because of the housing crisis, and it's starting to happen. But before we go there, let me just quickly take a step back and talk about this housing crisis. So the problem with the housing crisis in Canada is that housing is becoming unaffordable. We're talking about buying a home, we're talking about renting, we're talking about any shelter is becoming unaffordable. And it is a big political problem for Justin Trudeau and his Liberals, because they are going towards a general election next year, and to be put it frank, the people of Canada are up to here. They can't deal with it. It's like housing is the most unaffordable it's been since, I think, the early 80s. So people are getting tired of it, and Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are slipping in the polls dramatically. So they have to do stuff. Now, they've tried a couple of things. They've tried the foreign home buyers ban. They've tried, what was the other one? Oh, the empty homes tax. They have now started mailing checks to the provinces and the cities to start building and getting, spades in the ground and building housing. But all of that hasn't made a difference. The pricing of shelter is still going up, and it's causing a headache, not only for them politically, but also for the Bank of Canada, because inflation isn't calming down, so they cannot decrease interest rates, and they cannot decrease interest rates because the main thing driving inflation right now is shelter cost, and that they can't get that down. So anyway, they finally started aiming at the one thing. What did they say? Now they're throwing the kitchen sink at it. Recently, Mark Miller, the Minister of Immigration, actually announced that Canada is going to put quotas in on temporary residents. Now, in immigration in Canada, you've got a temporary resident, a permanent resident, and a citizen. Temporary residents are people like me when I came in originally on a work permit, and there are a lot of people out here on a work permit. So in other words, you just get granted the right to come and work in Canada for 2 years or 3 years or however long they make it out to be. And that is generally a path towards citizenship, because like us, we came in as temporary residents. When we got here, Belinda got a job, she got nominated by the province, and we got our permanent residency. So that is kind of a path for immigrants to come into Canada, one of the main paths. So just to give you some indication, currently temporary residence makes up 6.2% of the whole Canadian population. Now that's a lot. Canada is 40 million people, so what's that? 6.2%, that's 120, 240, that's about 2.5 million people are actually temporary residents. So, that's a lot of temporary residents, and their target is to get that down to 5% by 2027. In order to do that, they need to decrease the number of temporary residents by about 19% over the next few years. So that actually means that a lot of temporary residents, they actually need to start getting rid of people, believe it or not. So there's already 6.2, so it's either going to mean that they are not going to take in any more temporary residents, so they're not going to allow any more work or work permits to come through, or what they are going to do is they're going to start not renewing work permits. Now that's already happened with somebody I know. I mean, a friend of mine, he's here on a work permit. He's got his permanent residency application in. Him and his wife are here on his work permit. He came in as an entrepreneur, and when he had to renew his work permit, which was generally just a formality, suddenly they declined him and gave him 90 days to get out of the country. It's a nightmare, I guess, and it's going to be a nightmare for a lot more people, and it's coming very, very soon. Last year, immigration in Canada, 1.2 million people came into Canada. Of that 1.2 million, 800,000 was temporary residents. So in other words, basically what it means is like work permits are going to become a lot harder to come by, and a lot of people are probably going to have problems renewing work permits. So if you haven't got your permanent residency in, or you haven't got your thing done while you were a permanent resident and already approved, you might have an issue renewing. Well, that's of course if the government follows through, because you know it could also just be political grandstanding. I mean, the election is next year. We don't expect it to make a difference by then. So it could just be JT and the politicians going, oh, we're going to do this, just so that everybody votes for them again, and then they can carry on as they want it. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, that's going to have a huge influence on a number of things, because getting rid of these permanent residents, or these temporary residents, I mean, it would generally definitely have an effect on the housing crisis. I really believe so. Although the proper solution to the housing crisis would just be to stop with all the damn red tape and NIMBYism and allow developers to actually build houses and make properties available to people. Now, they are working on that. I mean, the rezoning laws and a whole bunch of things are going on. It's not something that you're going to solve quickly, but immigration is definitely one of the main drivers of the housing prices in Canada. Yeah, so in roughly if they are planning on doing what they want to do by 2027, it pretty much means that we have to lose 440,000 temporary residents over the next 3 years, or the next 2 years. So in other words, the Canadian temporary resident number needs to decline by almost 500,000 people. So I'm going to be very interesting to see how that pans out. I mean, I suppose there is a way, just make them all permanent residents, then they're not temporary residents anymore. You know, never know with politicians, there's always a loophole. But the bottom line is, I think it is going to get significantly harder to come into Canada on a work permit, and it might actually be a problem to come into Canada or to stay in Canada on a work permit. So if you are here on a work permit, I know so many people that are on work permits with the plan of becoming permanent residents, and they're dragging their feet because they're not submitting their stuff, or they, you know, just taking time. It's like life gets in the way. It happens to all of us. Luckily, I had Belinda, which was like counting the days. Every time something was available, she did it immediately. A lot of people are not like that, and it might be a problem. Make sure that you get your processes and your things in place as soon as possible, because the possibility of having your work permit renewal declined has just increased dramatically, because we need to shed temporary residents in order to stick to what they have just planned here. So, yeah, that's it, guys. Interesting facts. You know, Canadian politics is all over the place. It's always we have a run up to an election, so now there's going to be a lot of funny things happening, I suppose. All right, you all must have an absolutely beautiful day. We will speak again soon. Cheers.